first and second fill ex-bourbon casks back sort of in 97, 98. By 2008, this was part of the core range. So the 10-year-old has been part of the core range ever since. And it's an incredible whiskey. The perfect balance of soot and fruit, as it was once described. And 46% ABV. Yeah, it's a cracker. So it's everything you want in an Ardbeg. We've got lots going on when we make the new make spirit here. We've got very high, heavy peated, very high phenolic malt, over 55 parts per million in terms of the sort of phenol content, which is very high. But we mix that up here because our stills, when we're actually distilling the wash, we run them pretty slow, but we also have a purifier in the spirit stills, so we get lots of reflux, lots of as that spirit is condensing, dropping back into the spirit still, lots of copper contact, and you get a beautiful estery, fruity notes to your new make spirit. And then after 10 years in ex-bourbon casks, you get this wonderful balance. Like it's like citrusy on the nose, I always think. But
it's like limes, isn't it? It's like cutting into a lime.
Yeah, lime sherbet. Someone once described it to me. I think it's absolutely cracking tasting note. But there's that sort of saltiness. The great thing I always think with Ardbeg whiskey, smell's such a personal thing to people. You and I, Henry, have grown up in different parts of the world. We will have smelled different things, and you always associate places to smell. But a quick nose of that, you're here, that you're instantly transported to the place. It's that wonderful, really citrusy, like honey candy sort of thing going on with vanilla. But then there's that ash, that classic little bit of seaweed, salty ash, smoked meat. It's beautifully balanced, the Ardbeg 10. It's a superb whiskey. So, Slange, let's have a wee taste. Creamy, quite creamy, vanilla. Oh, it's just lovely.
And what are the casks that you use on this? Because it tastes very sort of a kind of American oaky, sort of bourbony. But it's good to know about that.
Yeah, we fill a mix of casks on site, so all filling is done on site. So we fill every cask of Ardbeg is filled here on site. We have warehouses here on site, and some goes to the mainland for maturation as well. But we tend to fill American oak barrels, which are small, straight from the States, and we will fill a lot of first fill. So once obviously they've come from the States, they've had bourbon in them, then we'll just put new make straight into them. And once obviously that's been matured, we'll disgorge it. Then second fill, we'll use the casks again. And that's really the makeup of the Ardbeg 10 is first and second fill ex-bourbon casks. And you get such a great, that American oak, you tend to get a lot of that vanilla, coconutty, these notes, and there's a great hit of vanilla in the 10-year-old. So, yeah, I think it just works beautifully, that balance. I mean, as we go through some of the other drams, we do use a mix of American oak, European oak, American oak, ex-bourbon and ex-sherry casks as well, or also sherry. But the 10-year-old is all about the influence of the American oak. But you get such a good balance between, and again, as we go through the whiskies, I think that's such a key thing. Young Ardbeg works really, really well. And I think the whole age thing, we've done so much work, and one of the things that came out when Ardbeg sort of found its feet again under Glenmorangie, we bottled the, still young and almost there in the peaty pathway, we called it the young whiskies. You get a huge amount of distillery character and less wood influence. And I think the 10-year-old just works beautifully because you've got a lot of that real distillery character, but just the right balance of wood and maturation just to sort of balance it off and sort of smooth it. Some of the younger Ardbegs are maybe a bit more vibrant, a bit more powerful. The 10 is just a beautiful balance. So, it's a superb whiskey.
I love that. I love the sort of sweetness and the smoke. And then you mentioned that a lot of smells are to do with like, you know, what you're used to from growing up. And this probably says like what my childhood was like. But I always get bacon frazzles from it.
Yeah, frazzles.
Those crisps, which, you know, sort of makes sense because you've got the corn from the bourbon barrels, you know, the sort of bourbony taste.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you've got the smoke. So it's
that smoked meats. Yeah, I ate too many Iron Brew bars as a child, but I'm pleased to say I'm not picking that up in the Ardbeg 10. But I know it's amazing how it's funny. I know we've both got young children. You know, when you're at a young age, it's amazing how you'll very quickly describe a smell. You know, my children will say that smells like, rather than when you get older, you just say I don't like that or I do like that. You're much more descriptive when you're young with smells, and I think whiskey is always a great social drink, you know, and especially this weekend, well, this whole week for Fèis on Isla, you know, we normally have thousands of people here, and it's all about meeting up old friends and talking whiskey. And I do think that's one great thing about whiskey, the range of flavours and tastes, and being able to share that. And it's because smell is a personal thing, so there's always a whiskey you can like. You know, everyone can find a whiskey that they enjoy.
Yeah. And you alluded to the time when, you know, the future of Ardbeg wasn't so secure. So that was the 90s, wasn't it? When the distillery almost demolished at one point?
Well, the site was shut through a large part of the 80s in the sort of Allied days. The site was, we were owned by the parent company that had Laphroaig as well. So Laphroaig was running. Ardbeg was only really run very occasionally, and it was shut for a number of years. And really early 90s, the site would run in the odd campaign, and it was all going really for blends. So that, you know, they would send off, or we would send off whiskey for the blenders, really, and that's why it was being run. And it really wasn't looking good at all. And then in 97, it was put up for sale. But yeah, there was talk even before that it potentially could be demolished. A lot of buildings did go. When you look at pictures, I mean, we've got a big site here, and there is lots of buildings at Ardbeg. But if you look at pictures from 60s, 70s, there's a lot more buildings, more warehousing and houses. I mean, there's a guy, Craig, in the village who comes up. His son's actually on shift. He's one of the boys on shift. He comes up to paint the site every year, and he grew up here as a boy and remembers the school and all the houses here. So it evolved and changed, but we still very much, you know, it's kind of risen from the ashes. It was always a superb whiskey, Ardbeg, and people knew that. And we've had great investment from the company, you know, Colin Gordon and now LVMH who own us, and the site's looking absolutely beautiful. When you compare it against, you know, pictures from 97, and the investment and really, investing for the future and making sure that we've got a long and successful future. You see that when you come here. It's beautiful. The site's looking incredible just now.
Yeah, and how important do you think the Ardbeg committee is to ensuring that Ardbeg never closes again?
Oh, massive! Yeah, I mean, we've got 100,000 members, over 130 countries represented in the committee, and I was a member of the committee before I took the job here. So, yeah, I think there's always been such passion. You know, there's almost a cult-like status around Ardbeg fans, and
yeah, you get Ardbeg tattoos, don't you? You get kind of Norwegians with Ardbeg tattoos and stuff.
Yeah, seen a few Ardbeg tattoos. There's a few on Isla with Ardbeg tattoos as well. But I think we've always had that real passionate fan base, and the committee is a big part of that, because we want them to feel invested in the future and make sure that they feel part of it. So. Yeah, I'm sure there'll be lots to come with the committee as well over the next few years. But yeah, I hope you remember yourself, Henry.
I'm not actually, no, sorry.
You need to get yourself signed up, ardbeg.com.
You've just put me on the spot. I feel so embarrassed now.
So, look, we all make mistakes. Just make sure you get yourself signed up.
Okay, I'm going to make a little note of that committee. And you get first dibs on things like Scorch, don't you? So if you want to get hold of a bottle of Scorch, if you're on the committee, you get offered it first, don't you? Yeah,
that's right. We do 2 releases. So the Scorch that's now been released as our festival bottling which we'll come to in a second, is at 46% alcohol. or ABV. We did a committee release just a month or so ago, and it's slightly higher cask strength, 51.7, I think. 51.7. So yeah, you get an opportunity to get to buy those bottles. So yeah, you don't want to miss out on that.
Right. Well, that was a good segue into the Scorch, wasn't it? That was
Absolutely.
seamless.
That's seamless. Brilliant. Scorch, yeah. I mean, one great.
Magnificent.
Oh, I have a pour. It's a beautiful colour as well. You'll see when it comes through. I mean, we don't add any colour to any of the whiskies. That's all natural. One great thing about the role is we have an incredibly talented whiskey creation team headed by Dr. Bill Lumsden, and Bill and his team, Gillian and company, have put together an absolute cracker here. So it's these heavy charred American oak, heavy charred ex-bourbon casks. And they are second fills, if you like. So we heavy these chards. Excuse me. The cask came from the States, heavy charred. We filled them, and after about 10 years, that liquid was disgorged, and we've refilled these casks. And this is what we've got out of them: Scorch. And it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So I've only had it a few times, but you get a big hit from that heavy charred cask, so you get lots of that, like real. Again, there's the citrus bit, like vanilla, like almost like a sweet. Add like a sweet note to it. Again, I get the barbecue.
There's a lot of soot there, isn't there? I mean, there's a lot of.
Absolutely. So I was going to say your frazzles there, that barbecue thing. Yeah, but you maybe put it out of my head now. But I absolutely like. Suit a bit of, that sometimes tarry rope thing you get with Ardbeg, but it's just beautifully balanced again by, there's almost like a black currant. There's a really fruity note to it as well. It's an absolute beautiful dram. And
how many bottles have you filled of this?
We never actually. Well, we never say, but we never really know. I mean, it's limited. I mean, it's in the thousands. We do a big release because we want to make sure as many people can get it as they can. But it goes. It does sell out really quickly. So I won't know the exact number, but it's in the thousands.
Right. Okay.
Shall we have a wee taste?
Oh yeah. Almost forgot. It's a beautiful colour.
I know it's beautiful. That's as I said. We don't. There's never any colour at it. It's beautiful, like straw and gold.
Wow. Bang. There's a lot of flavour in there, isn't there?
Oh, aye.
You get the fire-breathing dragon. I'm almost breathing fire from this.
It's I know it's a big finish to it, isn't it? It's almost like the soot comes back, it sort of goes and comes back, that sort of powerful, again, like that sort of salt, almost a peppery, like sooty thing just in the cheeks. But yeah, there's a real like sweetness in the tip of the tongue, that sort of smooth vanilla, that heavy charred American oak. There's loads going on there, coconutty almost.
Yeah, there's a sort of, I love the kind of the big spice, kind of chilies, and then there's sort of toffee and stuff, and the sweetness and stuff. It's got, like you said, with the 10-year-old, it's got that beautiful balance.
Aye, absolutely. I sometimes get like a menthol thing. The first time I was looking back at some of the notes when I first tried Scorch, and I think you quite often get it with Ardbegs. There's almost just like a eucalyptus, like menthol thing, and I think sometimes when you nose this as well. It's beautiful. It's a cracker, and I think again, it's a really good example. One of the festival bottles we did a number of years ago was Alligator, and Alligator was heavy charred casks, first fills, and that sort of American oak, that vanilla coconut note, I think is very much here. But I really like the balance of this as well. I was actually going to say I prefer it to Alligator, but that again, there's a lot of passionate fans of Alligator. It was a superb festival bottling, but something about Scotch I just think works beautifully. It's a superb whiskey.
Well, we've got lots of comments coming through. We've got Stephen in Leicester, who is bemoaning the fact that Scorch is going to be such a limited edition. He sort of says that it's a shame that capacity will never be enough to satisfy worldwide demand for limited editions. But he also says he loves the 10 Wee Beastie and the Uigeadail.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. It is one of the challenges we face because as the sort of popularity of Ardbeg grown, I think everyone appreciates it's a superb spirit, you know, a great whiskey, and it's almost like word is out. And I think a lot of people that over the years have been picking up Ardbegs, it is becoming harder with things like committee releases as more people want to get their hands on. So I hope people that want to try it can get their hands on it because it can be tough sometimes.
But you've expanded recently, haven't you? Isn't that one of the things that you were overseeing?
Yeah, so Ardbeg a few years ago announced that to meet future demand, we'd have to try and expand. And there was a number of projects done over the last few years. There was a new boiler house built. And then the big project, or there were really two big projects. One was build the new still house to increase the distillation capacity on site. So we have always had one wash still, one spirit still. So one pair of stills. And the way that works, one wash back when we're fermenting would have to be split. So half that wash back into the stills, the other half would just have to wait until you'd obviously finish your wash distillation, then you could get the second half in. And that held things up in terms of time. So the decision was made to make a new still house with 2 wash stills, 2 spirit stills. And it was meant to be commissioned spring last year. COVID obviously came. The site actually here at Ardbeg shut for 8 weeks during the first lockdown. And then the still house was sort of on hold. I took the job on the 1st of October, and I remember my walk round with Mickey Heads, my predecessor, and Mickey just said to me, "This is your big task. You've got to get the still house running."
No pressure.
So no pressure at all. It was quite a feat, but we did it. We got it going. We got the work all finished. We got the commissioning done in mid-March. So we ran spirit for the first, on 19th of March, I think it was, we ran spirit through the safe for the first time. And that was incredible. There's not many distillery managers, not many people that work in distilleries get to, commission a new still house at a 200-year-old site, or 206-year-old, as it will be this year. So really, really, I was honoured. And I mean, I came in for the night shift to see the first spirit come through, and it was incredible. Really, really exciting for everyone. And that just gives us an opportunity to get more volume through at the quality we want. So it was all about quality. Everything has to be in spec. You clearly don't want to commission a new still house that's not. So a lot of work's gone into it, and I'm pleased. The guys have settled really well into the new distillery. The other thing that we built was a new filling store, because again, we fill all the casks on site, like I was saying. So we built a new filling store that has, again, a bit more space and a bit more opportunity to do more with the casks. So been a lot happening, busy, really, really busy. 8 months, crazy, but great. It's been a roller coaster, but loving it. It's been such an adventure, so really exciting.
And I'm just sort of fascinated by kind of new stills coming in. And is there a moment where, or a sort of process of getting them sort of tuned up so that they are producing the same spirit as the old ones?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think, yourself, when you ever go around the distillery, people talk about, shape and size of the still is clearly key, because you want to replicate the exact shape of the still. You want to replicate the volume, the run times. But it's interesting because you run brand new stills, brand new pipework, brand new tanks. You could have been in a still house and the tanks have got, I always say gunk up, but over time when you're distilling your faints and everything, the tanks do gunk up. And it's funny because the first few runs we did, we were pretty pleased, quite happy, but we almost had a bedding in period of I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 weeks just to make sure things were running, and that's really when it sort of clicked in. Because everything was so new, you just needed to give it a wee bit of time. But we're delighted with where we're at.
We've just had a comment, slightly controversial, saying that Corey Vrecken is somebody's. Rob is saying that that's his favourite from the core range, which is the one that we're not trying. So
I'm sorry, Rob. Yeah,
you know, what can we do?
Corey Vrecken, it's a beauty. I don't think you'll struggle to find a bad Ardbeg. Corey Vrecken's brilliant. That's French oak casks in that as well. So it's a great whiskey. And
then we're probably going to get an Anoa fan coming in.
I know. Again, a great whiskey which we marry. We've got big French oak marrying vats on site, and I know it's been going really well. Actually, it's again we just some younger whiskey in it, and it's a great balance, a really great dram.
Yeah. I just want to ask you about this legendary dragon, because there's is it on Islay or is it actually in Ardbeg? Is there a mythical
the story
house?
There's been some fierce beasts in the warehouses over the years, but I don't know if anyone's quite spotted a dragon. But there's an old Corey Croven. There's an old story of a dragon on Islay many moons ago. And we always like a grain of truth in the story of the Ardbeg fish bottlings. We've the dragon. He's residing in Warehouse 3 and charring the casks for us. So,
well, this is another brilliant segue onto the Wee Beastie, isn't it? I think.
I like what you did there. Yeah,
because it's like, beasties in the warehouse, and here's Wee Beastie, which I haven't tried yet. I'm really interested to try this one because a young Ardbeg.
Yeah, it's a 5-year-old. He's 5-year-old. This became part of the core range last year. So in 2020, we added Wee Beastie to the core range. It's 47.4%. And it's a mix of refill. Yeah, you can see that. It's only 5-year-old. It's refill American oak ex-bourbon casks and refill Oloroso sherry casks. And it's interesting actually, because when we move on to the Uigeadail is pretty much the same cask makeup but older. But what we wanted to do with Wee Beastie, because young Ardbegs work very, very well, we wanted to really bring something into the core range to show it's all about flavour led, the whole thing with the age profile, and young Ardbegs work particularly well. So we wanted to do something with it, and this is what we came up with Wee Beastie, and it's been a roaring success. It's a fantastic. It's like fresh, vibrant, a lot more of a distillery character, a lot less wood influence in it, but it's quite herbal, peppery pear. I always think there's a lot
of grain as well. You can really smell the malt.
Yeah, and that's you often lose that through maturity, through maturation. You'll tend to lose that note. And just almost a wee bit cereal sort of note that you pick up on it. It's
and then that grassy note. Yeah, was it grassy that you said? There's a sort of it's almost like a kind of like you get in a young rum. That kind of herbal grassy.
Herbally grassy thing. Yeah, there's like real oomph to it. On the nose. There's a lot going on.
Like that. Yeah.
There's almost just a wee bit of acidity to it, and you can kind of tell it's young. But yeah, it's exciting, it's vibrant, and we'll have a wee taste. I think it's almost aniseedy. I think but there's like a chocolate note, the smoked meat thing again, that ash coating.
Yeah. I think maybe it's just the power of suggestion, but I'm now getting that aniseed sort of thing, like ouzo or something. There's a little bit of ouzo.
Yeah, absolutely.
You could drink this on holiday with ice and water,
like a mezcal or something. Yeah, it's quite. There's it packs a punch. It's quite powerful. That almost citrusy note that you sometimes get, I think, is amplified, almost like a concentrated version of that. It's a really, really great example, Wee Beastie, of the distillery influence of the spirit as it's starting to move towards that real wood influence of maturation. And there's a lot going on. It's been a huge success. I'm a big fan. I really like Wee Beastie. It's unashamedly Ardbeg. It really does pack a punch. It's delicious.
And tell me again about the oak use. You said it's quite similar to Uigeadail.
Yeah, so we use a mix of casks for Wee Beastie. We use a mix of ex-bourbon casks and ex-Oloroso sherry casks. And the exact same cask makeup for Uigeadail, but Uigeadail is older, if you like. So there's no age statement on Uigeadail when we come to it, but it's a good bit older than Wee Beastie. And I think it's interesting when you compare them side by side, because you've got a lot more of that wood influence. So it's amplified. That sort of chocolatey, rich note that you get is sort of amplified against the Wee Beastie there.
We've got a very good question from somebody called Garrett Jansen, who says, I'm curious if Colin could craft his perfect Ardbeg, what would he blend together?
Oh, what a question. Do you know, there's a lot of innovation. That was such a big draw to this job. We've got an amazing amount of innovations. We try lots of funky stuff and amazing stuff, and lots of great wood types. And we've played about with loads of casks in the warehouses. There's some really, really interesting stuff. I think it's quite difficult, because I think we've almost got some really drams that are near perfection, to be honest, that I wouldn't want to change about. But if I was having if I could go wild in terms of innovating and trying, I would really like to see how like heavily roasted malts or chocolate malts or something like that would go through. Obviously peated as well. You would have to have that smokiness. We've done unpeated in the past, obviously Blasda and all that years ago. So, but I would love to see how that would impact. Our parent company is obviously Glenmorangie, and Glenmorangie with Signet, I think, is an amazing whiskey, and I would be really intrigued to see how that goes through the plant. You never know, something like that may happen in the future. But yeah, that's a great question. I'll need to sort of ponder upon that, how we would make something up. But I really think something like the Uigeadail will come to that real 50-50 balance of Oloroso and ex-bourbon is pretty much as close to perfection you'll get with Ardbeg. It's just a superbly put together whiskey.
It must be great working with Dr. Bill, because there's always like a sense, there's always something going on, isn't there? I'm sure there's stuff going on at other distilleries, but with Dr. Bill, this is Dr. Bill Lumsden, who is head of whiskey creation. Is that right? At Glenmorangie and Ardbeg. And he's just full of ideas and experiments, and does things with wild yeasts and heavily roasted malt. And it's just, there's just a sense of anything is possible about visiting, about talking with Bill. It's he's a real inspiration.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I mean, we had a call, I think, our first or second week in the role, and he just chatted away about some of the innovation they've done. I mean, some of it's never seen the light of day. There's some amazing stuff that's been trialled here on site, and he's saying that that's something that the site's always keen to do. And did I have any thoughts? And it's brilliant to be part of that. That's what it's all about. It's we've got an incredible range of flavours and tastes across what's there now 130 odd distilleries in Scotland, but it's all about keeping innovating and trying new things, and I'm delighted that will continue.
So chocolate malt Ardbeg, you heard it here first.
I hope so. I'm not saying it's coming soon, but I hope so.
If I was just going to ask you, this is a slightly kind of nerdy question about peating, but is the peat you use, is it Islay peat, or is it mainland, or is it a mixture, or where does it come from?
So we predominantly, the vast majority of malt we process is from Port Ellen Maltings, which uses Islay peat. So they have a peat moss on just off the high road. Obviously, the two main roads between Port Ellen and Bowmore is the high road and the low road. and just off the high road is their big peat moss, which they take peat from. So the vast majority of Ardbeg is made with malt from Islay peat.
And how's that different? How does that affect the taste?
Well, there's a lot that say it doesn't. So it's funny. I spoke about this quite often. You would get asked this, and there's I'm a bit of a whiskey romantic. So I love my whiskey, and and when I worked at the Maltons for 3 years, there were days where maybe there'd been like a very, very wet summer, and you would sometimes have to bring in a bit of mainland peat to get the fire going before putting the Islay peat on because it was so wet. And the boys on shift used to always say that it never burnt as well. The Islay peat always burnt and gave you a thicker, richer smoke. Now, there's people have looked at it and said by the time you malt your barley and then dry it off with the peat smoke, and then by the time you've stored it, milled it, mashed it, fermented it, distilled it, stuck it in a cask for 5, 10, 15 years, it probably doesn't really matter where the peat's from. But the whiskey romantic in me, I have to be honest, there was always something when you burnt the Islay peats, it just tended to burn. I always felt like a richer, thicker smoke. But there you go. So scientifically, there's been quite a lot written about it recently. A lot of people feel it maybe doesn't make a huge difference, but you don't tell the boys on shift that in Port Ellen, they would tell you otherwise.
No, well, I think there needs to be more research before we dismiss it entirely, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the makeup of peat is different everywhere, depending on the vegetation, and there's a huge amount of sphagnum moss and heather and Islay peat. Why, if you go other places, there'll probably be a lot more sort of woody components. So the makeup of the peat is definitely depending on where you go around Scotland.
We've got some really good questions coming in. We've got lots of people commenting, just saying. We've got Frankie Hawkins saying he's an Ardbeg fan. We've got Tony Hamblin saying Wee Beastie's young, but my favourite Ardbeg. We've got someone whose name I'm going to pronounce really badly, Sakis Agalakis, who says a 5-year-old newbie with the style of a gentleman. And then we've also got some really interesting. Yeah, the style of a gentleman. It's a great description.
That's great, yeah.
But we've got a great question coming in from, I assume, a Scandinavian called Ivor Skogheim, who says, is Wee Beastie considered one of the smokier Ardbegs?
I would say so. I think if you're using, say, first fills, like say you're using American oak, ex-bourbon casks in their first fills, they come straight in from the States and we fill them with new make. That big, very active casks, lots of wood influence, you will lose certain phenolic notes. And I think because Wee Beastie is refill ex-bourbon and ex-Solar also, and it's young at 5 years, it's certainly powerful, I would say, to nose and to taste. Yeah, it's I would say one of the most powerful and peaty to taste.
And they all use the same new make, so all this range, it's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, everything is consistency is key. Making sure everything's in quality, and then we play about with the wood to influence it. And that's the great thing of tasting this sort of 4 here is you can see how that wood influence has altered it every time.
We've got Stephen Lester, or maybe Stephen in Leicester, saying this is a question that I really want to know. Are there any long-term plans to put out an older age statement whiskey into the core range?
Well, we did sort of try Van. It was a 19-year-old. We've done 2 versions of that, which may reappear, and there was the 25-year-old, the Ardbeg 25 as well. Which I think is to fit into the core range. So the difficulty with Ardbeg is stock, because we had so little stock, and as we're now ramping up the volumes that were made maybe 15, 20 years ago, the demand far exceeds them. So there's a real balance we've got to play with managing the cask stocks to try great new expressions, and look to do something like that, make sure that we have older versions of Ardbeg in the core range. So there's little bits and pieces, and there may be more to come.
Okay. And then one more question from Adam Johnston. This might actually be more of a question for Master of Malt, but anyway, it's any chance plans you can put together a set of samples from across the range? Miniatures.
We do 10-year-old miniatures, but things like the Scorch and that we've not got in miniatures, unfortunately.
Yeah, maybe it's something Master of Malt could do, drinks by the dram, Ardbeg set.
Here, I'm just going to delegate that right back to you, Henry. I think.
Yeah, well, I'm going to send it upstairs to the boffins with the.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but that would be wonderful. A tasting set of all this. Yeah, that's. I'm going to next time I'm at the meeting of the big Master of Malt bigwigs. I'm going to table that on.
Yeah, okay. I think if you come with that,
that's a good question, Adam. Thank you. And then we've just had someone, Frankie Hawkins, saying, I've just bought 2 bottles of the new release 2020 Ardbeg, and I want to open a bottle, but I haven't had the pleasure yet. Sorry, one more question, and then let's go on to Uigeadail. This is from Tony Hamblin, and he says, how much whiskey from Ardbeg is exported? So I suppose how much is drunk in Britain? And
in the UK.
Where does it go after that?
I wouldn't know an exact figure. But we had, in fact, right through sort of lockdown in last year, we had domestic sales were really, really strong, Ardbegs in growth in the UK. But, we tend to have sort of big markets that take a lot of the States and Sweden and Germany. But I don't know. I'll need to find out. I'm not entirely sure what percentage is drunk in the UK.
Yeah, okay. I always think of you as massive in Scandinavia. Is that right?
Well, we've got the embassy in Stockholm, so we've got embassies around the world, but the Stockholm, the Swedish embassy is probably the most active. And yeah, we've got a pretty huge following in Scandinavia. Yeah, absolutely, the big Ardbeg fans. I went out to Norway about 6 years ago to actually watch a game of football in Trondheim, and I was in a bar in Trondheim and there was a guy wearing an Ardbeg t-shirt. So there you go. Honestly, just random. So yeah, there's no escaping it in Scandinavia.
No, but they've got good taste, haven't they?
Absolutely.
Talking of good taste,
yeah, should we do the Uigeadail?
The mighty Uigeadail.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'll let you pour it first, shall I? It's been with us a while now, Uigeadail. I mean, it was released in 2004, which is quite incredible. I know, it's beautiful.
Gorgeous.
I poured a big one there so you can see. Yeah. Oh, it's just unbelievable, Uigeadail. So it's the same cask makeup as Wee Beastie, but older. And you get instantly when you know that a lot less of the distillery character and more of the wood. It's obviously there. It is Ardbeg, but the wood influence is amplified. It's just, see on the nose, like Uigeadail, I always I get like a sort of those chocolate covered raisins, talking of sweets earlier, like chocolate covered raisins, but there's something like a conifer, like pine needles or something. I think there's this sort of like resiny thing, but you can nose that all day. It's just the most beautiful.
And there's dried fruit and stuff. So this is bourbon and Oloroso sherry. Is that right?
Yeah. Bourbon Oloroso sherry, and it's 54.2% ABV. So it's, and that complements. It complements the. You've got the heavy phenolic notes, the smoke, that sort of oily creosote notes balanced with these fruit, the sort of light fruits you get, and then the sort of cask influence fruits as well. It's just, there's so much going on, so much going on. Almost like brown sugar on the nose or something. You're talking about rum earlier as well.
Like bacon that's been cured in sugar or maple, sweet bacon, which is obviously the best thing in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like meeting an old friend.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Slange. Gosh. It's amazing how it carries its alcohol without, the smoothness. It doesn't overwhelm the palate. I don't feel like I need to add any water to it.
No, it's funny. some whiskies I do, some I don't. And if I try a new whiskey, I always will. But even at 54 and a bit, 54.2% ABV, it's just it's brilliant mouthfeel, like a beautiful finish. There's so much going on there, like that sort of chocolatey, real richness and depth. But it's less. We're talking about the Wee Beastie earlier. That sort of like ash. There's a definite. It's more like a sort of rounded burnt wood. It's just, but it's more subtle definitely than the Wee Beastie, but it's just a beautiful dram. It's a superb. It won World Whiskey of the Year back in the day. Perfection on the palate, it was once described as. So.
And when it was launched, was it? I mean, how did the Ardbeg purists take it? Because a sherry cask Ardbeg, was that considered a little bit racy?
No, I think it was very well received. Uigeadail is our top loch. It's the main water supply for the distillery. So, it was a big name. It's always difficult naming a new bottle, but I think when it was launched, there was great excitement about it, and it was one of the sort of, even though there's no age statement on the bottle, it was an older Ardbeg. It was older than the 10-year-old. So people, I think, as soon as they tasted it, just realised it was an incredible whiskey. So I don't think it was too controversial at all.
And why is it that if it is older than the 10-year-old, that you don't put an age statement on?
Because it's all about, it's really about taste. The age statements it's an interesting thing in the industry as well, that some people will naturally look for an age statement as a sign of quality, and I think what we've done with quite a lot of bottlings was we didn't bother putting an age statement on, so people could almost decide from themselves. So people don't instantly look at an on-age statement and think that must be about 3 years and a day old. That happened in the industry lots of times, and likewise, I've been lucky enough to taste some incredible whiskies, and I was once at a cask tasting. And there was a very, very, very old Speyside in a cask I got to try. It was 40 years old and it just tasted like a leather bag. It was completely over matured, But everyone was instantly drawn to the cask because you saw the 40 years. You're like, wow, let's try it. And I just think it's a really good thing with the age statement on the bottle, that it's often not there, because try it. If you like it, then that's all you need to know. But naturally, we're inquisitive. And I'm the same, I do always ask the question, even if it's a non-age statement, because it's natural. You're interested in what most whiskey fans like to know what it is. But we haven't done it.
Yeah. Well, interesting. We've just had a comment from someone called Cams12. Love all Ardbegs, but Wee Beastie is exceptional. Very memorable. A reminder not to get obsessed with age statements. So very wise.
Yeah, absolutely.
What I was going to ask you just a bit about Scorch, because we've just had someone from Canada wondering when he can get hold of a bottle. So how can viewers get hold of a bottle? How do they put themselves into the lottery or whatever?
If you go into ardbeg.com, it's all there. Different regions and countries have different release dates. So when we did the committee release, there was a list, and whether it was in Australia or Austria, there's some countries we can't get to just because the demand exceeds what we can make. So if you're interested in, then please just go into ardbeg.com, or if you message through the sort of Facebook channels, if you keep an eye on there, or any of the social media channels, someone will get back to you, because there are different release dates through. If you're a member of the committee as well, you should be updated. And if not, just send them an email and they'll let you know.
And if not, why not?
Exactly.
And if not, why aren't you a member of the committee?
Absolutely.
And we've just got some more. Someone's just saying the colour of the whiskies all look gorgeous. I will be making an order. So Ardbeg Day is Saturday. Is that right?
It's this Saturday. tune in, get into ardbeg.com. I think 2:00 we kick off. I should really know that. I know I'm not until slightly later in the day, but we've got loads of great stuff happening. There's Ardbeg, it's all about it's fun as well. Everything's always done with quite tongue-in-cheek. So yeah, there's lots of good stuff. There's tastings. There's like an interactive map where you can sort of travel around. There's a real sort of Dungeons and Dragons theme going on, I think it's fair to say. And get involved, tune in and see how we go.
Oh, it's going to be fun. And all the whiskies apart from Scorch are available from Master of Malt. So Uigeadail,
yep,
the 10-year-old, and the delicious Wee Beastie, which I was very surprised about. I was a bit skeptical. 5-year-old Ardbeg, but it's just so delicious, isn't it?
It's a great whiskey.
Can't stop thinking that.
It's gone crazy. It's gone crazy, Wee Beastie. It's going great. So, but that's what you do. If you make great whiskey, it should sell. So
it's easy, isn't it? Make the great whiskey. I don't know what the marketing people do all day.
They do a lot of great work.
Well, thank you so much. They're all available from Master of Malt. Thank you so much, Colin. Thank you for taking the time. I know you're a very busy man.
Cheers. Oh, no, it's a pleasure. Thanks, Henry. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thanks very much.
So we're going to say goodbye to you, and then goodbye to all the viewers, and join us for our next Master of Malt Live soon.